The special session of India's parliament last week was indeed special. Not only was it the first session to be held in the new parliament building, but the first bill to be passed on the new floor was the long pending but the least expected 27 years old Women's Reservation Bill.
नारी शक्ति vandan adhiniyam के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई दूंगा.
Nearly half of India's 93 crore registered voters are women, but only 82 women represent them in the Lok Sabha that has a total of 543 members. This poor representation of women in the country's highest legislative body is unfortunate, especially given the fact that it's been 30 years since the parliament amended the constitution to reserve 33% seats for women in panchayats, village councils, and municipal corporations. But a similar legislation to have women quota in Lok Sabha and state assemblies kept on getting scuttled from time to time since it was first proposed in 1996. Globally, 1 in 4 parliamentarians is a woman. In India, 1 in 7 parliamentarians is a woman. So reserving seats for women in the parliament was always important and urgent for the most populous country.
महिलाओं को अधिकार देने का, महिलाओं की शक्ति का उपयोग करने का ईश्वर ने ऐसे कई पवित्र काम के लिए मुझे चुना है.
Date of the next census is indeterminate. The date of the next delimitation is indeterminate. So in the reservation which is dependent on 2 indeterminate dates, how are we going to get it?
100% regret है, वो उस टाइम कर देना था और इसको हम करके ही छोड़ेंगे.
सरकार को इसे साकार करने के लिए भी जो कदम उठाने की जरूरत है वो उठाने ही चाहिए.
यदि ये महिला रिजर्वेशन यहाँ आया है तो महिलाओं को अधिकार मिलेगा, मिलकर रहेगा. दुनिया की कोई ताकत इसको नहीं रोक सकती है.
बिल लाने का मकसद क्या है कि उन लोगों को लोकसभा में और स्टेट के असेंबलीज में उनको मौका मिले. जब उन्हीं का रिप्रेजेंटेशन नहीं है तो कैसा होगा?
अगर ये वाकई में महिला आरक्षण करना चाहते तो तुरंत अभी जो 5 चुनाव होने वाले हैं उसमें और 2024 के जनरल इलेक्शन में आप महिला आरक्षण लाइए.
फिर से सुनिए, मेरी पार्टी और मेरे नेता नरेंद्र मोदी जी के लिए महिला सशक्तिकरण राजनीतिक मुद्दा नहीं, मान्यता का सवाल है.
29 तक आएगी, नहीं आएगी, इलेक्शन हो जाएगा, जीतेंगे, महिलाओं को हरा देंगे, जिताएंगे, ये सब ड्रामा बंद होना चाहिए सर.
So what changed now? What prompted all political parties to agree on women's reservation? Should we women celebrate this historic milestone knowing well that the bill cannot be implemented before the 2029 elections? And where are these women parliamentarians going to come from to fill the quota? I seek answers to these and many more questions from psephologist Professor Sanjay Kumar from the think tank CSDS, that is the Center for the Study of Developing Societies.
I don't think there was any need to bring about this bill right away because the bill will anyway be introduced maybe 7, 8 years, 10 years from the date of passing of the bill.
We also have Kangshi Agarwal, founder of Netri, which is India's first incubator and aggregator for women in politics.
Where will these next 33% women who are going to go to the legislatures, both at state and the national level, where are they going to come from? They're going to come from the grassroots.
And I speak to my colleague from the Economic Times, Nidhi Sharma, who tracks politics, electoral issues and the parliament.
If more number of women are actually turning out for an election, it makes them a constituency. They become a vote bank which needs to be cultivated.
It's Tuesday, September 26th. From the Economic Times, I'm your host Kiran Somvanshi. And today in this episode, we delve into what it means to have women's reservation in India's parliament. This is the Morning Brief. When the world's largest democracy decides to reserve a third of its parliamentary seats for women, it's a big step towards women empowerment. The Women's Reservation Bill, or the Naari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam 2023, has been a landmark legislation for several reasons. It will effectively lead to the biggest mobilization of women running for public offices anywhere in the world. I speak to my colleague Nidhi Sharma, who has been covering this issue closely and has also written a book on women in Indian politics. So, Nidhi, how old is this issue of women reservation in parliament?
The demand actually started in the 1970s. So during the Constituent Assembly debates, I'd like to point out here that there was no demand for reservation for women in representative bodies. At that time, also, there were out of the 389 members in the Constituent Assembly, there were just 15 members who were women. Even these women somehow took pride in the fact that there is no requirement, they are equals, and there is no requirement for reservation for women. The first demand, so as to speak, actually came when there was this committee of women formed to examine what is called the status of women. It was appointed by the government in 1971, and it was formed after the UN actually wanted a status of women from all the countries, all the member countries. The first report of this is still treated as the most exhaustive work on the status of women in India, and it was done in 1974. And if you see, this is actually the first formal recommendation for having some form of reservation for women. Soon after, you can say the first reservation that came about was in Karnataka in 1983 when Ramakrishna Hegde government gave 25% reservation for women in local bodies. Then in 1988, a national perspective plan was formulated, and the first time when you see this figure of 33%, the first government document that mentions one-third reservation for women is this document. And as we all know, later Rajiv Gandhi came up with the idea of a constitutional amendment in panchayats and local bodies. This never got translated into one-third of reservation in parliament and legislative bodies. It remained at that level of local bodies and panchayats. It's only in the 90s that we finally saw this being pushed in parliament. In 1996, H.D. Deve Gowda government introduced a legislation in Lok Sabha on 12 September 1996, and it was the first time that this bill was pushed. And that is why right now, if you see the newspapers and journals actually talking about a 27-year wait that this bill has now been passed by parliament, it's actually a wait which is much longer.
Yeah, right. So the bill as such is 27-year-old, but the idea was first mooted in right from 1970s.
Yes.
So what are the contours of this reservation bill that has been passed?
So the most important part is that if we have total number of seats as 545 in Lok Sabha, out of these, one third of the seats would be reserved for women. So if we were to have reservation, this would mean one third of 545, which would mean exactly like 181 number of women could actually make it to Lok Sabha. Now, what is essential to note here is what the government has done is that even under SC and ST quota, there will be reservation for women. Also, women could fight seats beyond these 181. So, really, if we look at the brighter side, we could have more than 181 women also in Lok Sabha. Then comes the fact that there will be a sunset clause to this reservation, which is 15 years. So it says that it will first wait for the census. Then there will be a delimitation exercise. Now, delimitation freeze is till 2026. So we are looking at time frame of not this election in 2024, but at least 5 years later in 2029.
Delimitation simply means the reconfiguration of all the constituencies based on the latest population numbers. So, a constituency with higher population shall have more seats in the parliament compared to the one with lower population. So, what has been the stand of these various political parties on this issue? And has that stand changed over a period of time?
Very interesting, Kiran. It is actually changed. and changed like flip flop, a complete flip flop, a complete turnaround. So I take you to 12 September 1996 when H.D. Deve Gowda's government had introduced the bill. The first person to raise an objection was BJP MP Uma Bharti, who asked,
Wow.
exactly. So, who asked, what is there in it for OBC women? Why don't we have OBC quota? The Mandal parties, that is Samajwadi Party, RJD, and JDU, have always been opposed to this because they have said that have a quota like you have it for SC, ST women, have a quota within this quota for OBC women. And then again, if we look at 2008 bill introduced by Congress-led UPA, very interestingly, this was championed by the Congress, this bill. But at that time, Congress supported it, BJP supported it, and even the left parties had come on board. Who did not support the bill? Samajwadi Party, RJD, and JDU. Let's go to 21st of September when the bill was actually passed in Rajya Sabha and earlier in Lok Sabha on 20th of September 2023. All these parties had changed their stand. BJP championed the bill. It did not speak about quota within quota. It only spoke about SC and ST quota, very similar to the Congress-led UPA bill. Congress came up with a new demand. Let's have quota within quota. The same Congress that did not want to push this bill and accede to the demands of its ally Samajwadi Party in 2010. Today, there was a press conference by Rahul Gandhi where he admitted that, there was a mistake made and we need to have quota within quota and we should have quota for OBC women. So we saw everybody changing their stand.
Right. So interestingly, what changed or what brought everybody, this time on the same page, except for those two MPs who dissented? How come, this time it got passed?
It got passed as nobody wanted to be seen opposing it. If you really go back to a few elections, to our assembly elections, and even to our Lok Sabha election of 2019, you will see that women voter turnout actually has started surpassing the male voter turnout. Not just in the parliamentary elections of 2019, but also several states have started mirroring this trend. So,
Okay.
if more number of women are actually turning out for an election, it makes them a constituency. They become
Right.
a vote bank which needs to be cultivated. I would like to take you back to the 2022 elections of Uttar Pradesh Assembly. You do remember when Congress gave that very catchy slogan,
Yes.
"Ladki hoon, lad sakti hoon."
Yes. Yes.
Why? So, again, because the voter turnout in several assembly elections have actually been more for women. So, even in, say, Bihar Assembly, the only state which is still lagging behind is Gujarat, where there is a 5% difference between men and women voter turnout. But in gradually, more and more women in most assembly elections are turning out more. Hence, more and more political parties are actually wanting to court them, woo them as a constituency.
India joins around 100 other countries like the UK, Australia, Germany, Sweden, and UAE that have voluntarily or legally reserved quotas for women in parliament. Several countries such as Rwanda, Philippines, France, South Korea, and Argentina have benefited from implementing quotas through increased women participation in their national legislatures. India's neighbors, Pakistan and Bangladesh, have a quota of under 20% for women in their legislatures, while Nepal has 33% quota. I turn to Professor Sanjay Kumar of CSDS to know how effective is India's women reservation bill. Professor Sanjay Kumar, we had quota system implemented in Panchayati Raj, quite some years ago. What took so long to bring it to the state legislatures and the parliament?
The difficulty or the inhibition or the reservation which was among the parliamentarians, because the parliament, we had a fixed number of seats in the parliament, 543. Since there was no thought of increasing the number of seats for the parliament, so the fear was that if you introduce this provision, then out of 543 seats, you will have to give 180 seats to the women. And parliament, which is largely dominated by male members, they all feared, they all suspected maybe their seat will become a women reserved seat. So they will lose the political benefit. Now, with the new delimitation, there is a possibility that seats are going to be increased. Now we have moved to the new parliament, which has a capacity of sitting larger number of MPs can sit in the parliament. So now this has become acceptable that okay, the quota of 33% seats to the women is not going to at least hurt these 543. The additional seats is what is going to be given to the women. That has helped the ruling party in building a consensus.
So now that we have seen the women's reservation bill having been passed or in both the houses, what is your view on this one-third quota for women in Indian Parliament?
I think it's a good beginning, but a long way to go. Earliest government is saying it would be implemented in 2029 Lok Sabha elections, but I really doubt. It has been stated very, very clearly that the bill will come into operation after the next delimitation takes place. If we look at the earlier bill which was passed, it clearly says that delimitation will take place in 2026, and for the delimitation 2026, 2031 census data would be used for delimiting the constituency. So 2031 census data, census will start in 2031. The data might come in 2 years, 2.5 years. That is why I say I don't think it would be possible to implement women reservation bill in 2029 Lok Sabha election.
So do we celebrate or we don't?
Difficult to say whether we celebrate or not. So yes, it is a moment of joy, but I don't think the kind of celebration which we are witnessing, one needs to look at various clauses and figure out, are women of this country really getting something tomorrow, next year, next to next year? That doesn't seem to be happening.
So do you see now that all political parties at least being on the same page on this issue, do you see the coming election 2024 will kind of benefit in the sense that they will actually field more women candidates on their own even without this law being there?
If you look at way in which the bill was passed in the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, which is to say all unanimous. In Rajya Sabha, unanimous. In Lok Sabha, except 2 votes, everybody voted in favor of the bill. And if that is the enthusiasm, definitely they should be giving more tickets to women in 2024 Lok Sabha elections and also in the state assembly election, which goes to poll by end of this year. But if you talk to these politicians in person, in close conversation, I'm not sure many of them are going to say, yes, they really support the bill. And that is why I would put a question mark on whether political parties are going to give larger number of tickets to women candidates in forthcoming elections.
And what about this whole sunset clause of 15 years? So is it too less a period? Because we don't know when will be the first election when the women candidates will have that one-third quota. And does the 15-year period start from there? When does it start?
So the sunset clause is okay, but one has to figure out whether this will be applicable from the day it is implemented. In a sense, from the first parliament in which we have women reservation, we have women getting represented in the parliament based on the reservation. If it is from
Right.
today, I doubt that it is from today, then it has no meaning. But as I said, I can assume that the sunset clause will be not applicable from the day the bill is passed. I think it should be applicable from the day bill will be implemented. The bill will come into force. Because even for the provisions of reservation for Dalits and Adivasis, there is sunset clause. It gets renewed after some few years. It's not that this law has come into place and this is going to stay for forever.
And what about this whole demand of, quota within quota, for OBC women? How do you see that?
See, why is this demand for quota within quota? So once you implement reservation for women, automatically women belonging to Dalit communities and women belonging to Adivasi community will get reservation because they would get the reservation within the prescribed limit of the quota which is already there for the Dalits and the Adivasi. But if you look at the profile of 78 women who are represented in the parliament, and if you look at their profile, a large number of women belong to the upper caste and you will find very few women belonging to the OBC caste. If you look at the men, there are a large number of people who belong to the OBC caste. That's not the case with the women. So the fear is that if you give 33% reservation to women, a very large number of OBC women will be left out. And that is why I think there is a demand for quota within quota to ensure that women from different social background, when I say different social background, I mean upper caste OBCs are represented in the parliament, at least in decent numbers.
So, but is it feasible? Like, do you think quota within quota possibility can be explored or can be brought in?
Why it is not feasible? If you look at the provision of reservation for the local body elections, for the panchayat and for the urban local body election, there are provisions for reservation of women. And the way it is worked out, there is a special reservation for, there is a quota within the quota. OBC women, Dalit women, Adivasi women. So if such a provision can be worked out for local body election, why it can't be worked out for state assembly election in the parliament? Definitely feasible. No doubt about that.
And what do you think when the first Lok Sabha comes in with which has this one third quota of women? Who will these women be? Like typically, we have seen that in companies that when the women director mandate came up, most of these women directors were relatives of the promoters and the chairman or the CEOs, wives and sisters and daughters. So, do you see that same thing happening here when we will get those women coming in? They will invariably the relatives of the existing politicians.
First few parliament would witness sizable number of women coming from political background, somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, somebody's sister, etc. But I think slowly and gradually the change will take place, as it has happened in the local body election. For decades now, it has been more than 3 decades since local body reservation of women for local body elections were implemented. Yes, for the initial few years, we had proxy women getting elected to the local body election. We kept talking about, Sarpanch Pati, Sarpanch Bhai, etc., etc. But slowly and gradually, the change has taken place. And if we say common women, normal women, women not belonging to any political background, they are also getting elected to various local body elections in different states. I think that is what is going to happen with the state assembly elections and the parliamentary elections. Slowly and gradually, the change will definitely take place.
How has been the performance of the existing women in politics, and how they being there have made a difference, and how much more difference do you see in the way parliaments will work if we have 180 of them?
I don't think it is going to make huge difference in the quality of legislation, because I don't think that women are going to be united in the parliament, or women are going to vote, or women are going to legislate, or women are going to express their opinion as women, because they have to toe the party line. So quality of bills, I don't think, or the quality of debate in the parliament, I don't think it's going to affect much, because there is a system of whip. Parties would introduce whip, even if women belonging to different parties are not willing to either support or oppose a bill, but they will have to do that. So women, even if women will be in sizable number in the parliament, I don't think they would be able to make their voices heard.
And what is it going to change for the voters? Because we have seen the ratio of women voters going up. And do you see that more women voters will want more women candidates and they will actually vote better in that case?
In the past, when we have done our studies, we did not figure out massive preference among women voters for a women candidate, because Indian elections are contested on party line. 65% of Indian voters vote on party. So larger number of women contesting elections, that's not going to make a huge difference in voting preference among the women voters. At least initially for the first few elections, I believe. Maybe after few elections, if they see that the quality of elected representatives have changed, and that would certainly happen, then maybe women voters would get excited. Maybe if some men voters will also get excited about selecting women over a men candidate, if both of them are more or less of similar qualities.
So listening to all this, I feel that this move which took place, it's more for optics rather than actually really moving the needle immediately anytime soon.
Optics, I won't say it is only for optics, because if the bill is implemented, it will certainly benefit women politicians, those women who want to enter politics. But if you look at the timing, I don't think there was any need to bring about this bill right away, because the bill will anyway be introduced maybe 7, 8 years, 10 years out from the date of passing of the bill. So it could have been introduced even after 2024 election. So in that way, I think BJP, the ruling party, may have thought, why not try to take some political electoral gains from that? Because now the perception has been created. And that's a fact also, that BJP government has been able to pass the legislation which has been pending for last 27 years. So they are sending out a message to the women voters, women of this country, that this is the government which cares for the women. So they're hoping that even in 2024 election, some women voters will get excited and vote in favor of BJP. So I think BJP is trying to maximize political gains both in 2024 elections and in 2029 election.
So while the bill will soon turn into a law, there is an entire ecosystem that has been working to train women at the grassroots levels to be politically informed and ready. The Hunger Project, Koro India, Mahila Raj Satta Andolan, Political Shakti, and Project Prathamti are the leading organizations or movements that are purely women-focused in terms of political training, capacity building, and advocacy. I speak to Kangshi Agarwal, founder of Netri, a non-profit organization established in 2019 that is working at nurturing women leadership at grassroots levels and preparing women to take up positions in political parties and become political trainers and campaigners. So, to begin with, we have this women's reservation bill having been passed, and I'm wondering whether to celebrate or not. But how do you see it?
As I say it, women somehow seem not to get anything in full. There are always asterisks that come along with it. There is an if and a but and a condition tied to it. Right? This is the summary of our lives, sadly so. Having said that, the fact it is passed is worth celebrating for at least the common women. It has been a very tough thing to imagine that they will get tickets from the parties, because if you look at the history of political parties who give tickets not more than 9 to 10% to women, like most majority political parties, including BJP, Congress, and few others like, even NCP, Shiv Sena. But when you look at only TMC and BJD, who have committed in the last two elections that they have given either 33%, which is BJD, and close to 40% when it comes to TMC. Apart from these two parties, no parties have ever shown commitment to even get women in the fold of electoral politics. Organizational politics is separate, and that is where I agree that BJP is one of the first parties which had an organizational reservation for 1/3 women, which has at least made sure that there is an active cadre in BJP of women. Now, the good news here is that we have the bill and we have some more days before it will really, really get implemented. But this time is the time that one can look at as preparation time. It would have been a golden chance if they got chance to contest in 2024. However, this is not disappointing because in politics, this is the nature of politics. And now it is going to be a systemic intervention that they will get a ticket.
And the other thing was about, how do you see now going ahead things panning out? How do you see the political scenario?
When Netri started its work, we went to so many, like we piloted with 120 women at the grassroots in 4 constituencies across UP and MP. When we were doing that work, we came across this myth that a lot of women thought कि जैसे महिलाओं के लिए reserved seat होती है, there is a men's reserved seat. Like, so they thought that they can't contest from an unreserved seat at all, right? So it started to become an upper cap. However, we have seen in the last few years, the trends are reversing and women are also contesting in unreserved seat. So this 33% is not an upper cap. It is the minimum that the parties will have to give. And it is not like जहाँ से महिलाएं नहीं contest कर पाएंगी या जीत नहीं पाएंगी, because ultimately it's one woman out of many parties who's going to win. That number of women, and that is why the quota system works. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to refute any claims that this will be the same replication of what parties have done till now, giving weaker seats to women to contest. So it is a great time to now actually choose electoral politics, because you will need those 10 years to prepare your ground. If you're a new woman thinking of entering into politics without any background also, maybe 10 years is a great time to go and prepare your ground.
So how should women go about getting trained, and what is the ecosystem existing out there?
Yeah, I think fair question, because when we started this work in 2019, Kiran, people said, oh, women are not interested in politics. We disputed that. We disproved it. We provided evidence that when we even open seats for like 30 or 50 women, 200 women or 300 women apply to our programs, right? And then we have to make a cohort of 20 or 30 and give them that in-depth training. The answer really is that getting trained in something that you bring as a candidate to the party, as a person to the party, you have to have some skills that the party can use. And we have a broad segment of skills, right? You could be very good at organizing the grassroots. You could be very good at organizing people for events. You could be a true people person and a true people mobilizer. You could have very technical skills, from data, from technology to social media. These are indispensable tools of the modern day politics, right? So we look at politics not only as anyway, electoral politics, and it's an ecosystem. We are very mindful of saying that politics is not one power center, it is multiple power centers. So getting trained is definitely playing to some of your skill sets. This earlier you start, the younger you are starting, you can become a great generalist in the ecosystem, right? So we might want to really, really take over the spectrum, and now is the time.
And there is this whole question about all these women we are talking about who are going to fill the quotas, where these women are going to come.
Now, the common sadness of the worry was, where do the women go after they have been at the panchayat level, right? They've been in the panchayat for such a long time. Some of them drop out later because they don't get the rotational seat, reserved seat again. Some of them continue. So it's a matter of system finding its own feet. But there was a lot of distress amongst women also, that we don't get a step up. We don't get to go to Zilla Parishad, or we don't get to be picked for MLA. So now, answering the question, where will these next 33% women who are going to go to the legislatures, both at state and the national level, where are they going to come from? They're going to come from the grassroots. And there will also be new set of women who will come, who will be professionals, as I was saying.
But you see young women interested in this.
Yes, yes. Our age range is from 1920 to all the way up to 48. One will only be surprised to say that in politics, age sometimes seems like a number, because both of them can just be starting at zero. Or sometimes the younger people are far more engaged in the current conversation, right? Because they are up there on social media. Even whether they understand the nuance or not, that is our responsibility sometimes in the program, to bring them up to speed. And that is the kind of safe spaces that we create, because we are a non-partisan organization. So, yeah.
And are political parties also receptive for, taking these people or absorbing them?
Yes. So Netri has a tech platform also. So one is our full capacity building vertical, but Netri's on the second front is a political HR, right? Like, we provide trained women to political parties, and we at least do the referring. We are doing as many referrals, but that system is just being developed. We launched the platform actually earlier this year in February, but about, people are starting to get placed there. 500 women have already registered. We are constantly now curating possibilities and opportunities for them to enter these spaces.
It seems difficult to have women representation in public life without demarcating quotas for them, be it in politics or business. As India rolls out quotas for women in its legislatures, there is a lesson to be learned from the Indian boardrooms. When the Companies Act 2013 made it mandatory for listed companies to have at least one woman director on their boards, most companies ended up appointing the women relatives of the promoters' families to comply with the mandate. The common lament was, where are the eligible women who could qualify for a seat at the board? The practice ended up being so rampant that SEBI had to make it mandatory for the top 1,000 listed companies to have at least one independent woman director on their boards. Today, 95% of the listed companies have a woman on their boards. But there are only few that have women beyond that required number. While the legal quota was important to get women an entry into the boards, the quota unfortunately ended up defining the women participation at the board level. I fear that a similar pattern will play out in case of the Indian parliamentary system in complying with the Women's Reservation Bill. Quotas are good in the way they kickstart the public conversations and actions regarding women representation and provide the women a foot in the door of public life. However, they are liable to be misused as a form of optics rather than actually moving the needle on providing the deserving women their rightful place in public offices. Affirmative action is required, but with the necessary guardrails to prevent its misuse. So that's it for today. This is Kiran Somvanshi from the Economic Times, and you were listening all about the 1/3 for the 1/2 only on the Morning Brief. A special thank you to our guests Professor Sanjay Kumar, Kangshi Agarwal and Nidhi Sharma for sharing their amazing insights. This episode was brought to you by sound editor Amrit Reji and producer Surohini Jain. TMB's executive producers are Anupriya Nair, Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Burman. Thank you for listening, and if you like this episode, do spread the word. A new episode of the Morning Brief podcast drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. Don't miss it. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.